Good morning. I think I am live. I think I am. Someone can say, well, Mary Bottomley is watching, so therefore I must be live. That's good. Just give it a little bit. Good morning, Mary. Give it a little bit of time for people to catch on. I had a bit of a panic on then because I couldn't make it work. But anyway, so 2 people are watching now. That's twice as many people as 1. So I thought today I could do live. Good morning, Miranda. Good morning, Luke. Because I'm working, but I'm not working out of my house today. So I'm working from home today. And so I thought, well, this is a good opportunity for me to have, I hope to you, Luke, as well, for me to have my morning break, my 10-minute break with you. No bacon sandwich this morning, which I, for one, am very sorry about, but we have no bacon, so there we go. But I do have a cup of tea with me in my mug with a picture of my cat. I don't know when Rachel bought me that, I can't remember. Anyway, good morning, Barbara. So, without further ado, I'm going to get cracking, get into it. We've been, morning, Barbara. What time is it now, actually? Not got my watch on, anyway. Okay, I'm going to get going. So, leading up to these last few days, we've been looking at the time after the crucifixion. Morning, Ruth. Morning, Elaine. After the crucifixion, and leading up to then Acts of the Apostles, which is obviously what we've been doing on the nighttime slots. These various signs then Jesus meets with the disciples, and this particular one I'm going to cover today is a really interesting one because it's when he handles Peter for the first time since the whole denial thing and all that stuff. So that's sort of where we are with this particular verse, this particular portion of scripture. So I'm just going to read it out. Good morning, Pat. Hope Trev's all right. Good morning. Well, yeah. Good morning, bearded man. Well, actually, yeah. I've gone for the. I'm sort of. So I just let it grow again a bit. You know, I've had just couldn't bother to shave. I am out and about. I am seeing customers, but nevertheless, I thought this time I'd just let it grow because I can't have my hair cut, so I thought I'd just let it all grow. Anyway, so this is John 21. Verse 15 onwards we're going to go with today, and it's Jesus talks with Peter. So, if we're all started, I will begin. So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my lambs." He said to him again a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Shepherd my sheep." Then Jesus said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were younger, you used to gird yourself and walk wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will gird you and bring you where you do not wish to go." Now this he says, signifying what kind of death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, "Follow me." Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who had also leaned back on Jesus' bosom at the supper, and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? So Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, "Lord, what about this man?" Jesus said to him, "If I want him to remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me." Therefore this saying went out among the brethren, that this disciple would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him he would not die, but only, "I want him to remain until I come. What is that to you?" This is the disciple who is testifying to these things, and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true. There are many other things that Jesus did, which if it were written in detail, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. Okay, it's quite an interesting bit of scripture, that, isn't it? Because, Jesus really I think he really sort of lays into to Peter a bit. Then again, let's be honest, Peter does get laid into quite a few times throughout, really. I think he's a fascinating character. He's like a lot of us, isn't he? He's up and down, he's fiery, he gets it right, gets it wrong in equal measure. Bit of background. Alright, so what's been happening up till now? Morning, Claire. Up till now, Jesus had been betrayed by Judas. He'd been let down by the disciples. He'd been denied by Peter. He'd been condemned by the high priest. He'd been abandoned by Pontius Pilate. He'd been lynched by the mob. He'd been ridiculed, beaten, and then finally crucified by the soldiers. So, it had been a really rough few weeks. Then he'd been laid in a tomb. He rose again on the third day, shown himself to the disciples in a locked room, and then now he's met them while they are fishing. After which he stopped and had breakfast with them, which I always find a bit of an interesting thing to happen. It's interesting that they were fishing at all. I don't know the background to that. It's Peter's idea, of course. Peter's like, "Come on, lads, let's go fishing." So they go fishing. I don't know if that's Peter's return to form. Peter's like, well, once a fisherman, always a fisherman. This is what I know. I tried to be a godly man, but I'm going to be a fisherman. Or whether he just needed some food. I don't know. But that's the background to this conversation that takes place, just after breakfast. Now, Peter is a fascinating person. He's often, what Peter's like? I think Peter's like one of these guys in the group that sparks off things all over the place. Throughout the Gospels, I'm not really sure that he was the leader. Jesus was very much the leader, and I see no sort of sense that Peter was trying to vie for position. I just think that Peter really, really loved Jesus. I think that Peter, really, really bought into what Jesus was doing, and I think he had a very emotional man, and he emotionally connected with a lot of what was happening, and therefore he always threw himself. He threw himself at things. For example, even in this very scripture, when it talks about they were fishing, it says Jesus appears to the disciples, they have any fish. Therefore the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." So when Simon Peter heard it was the Lord, he put his outer garment on, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. I got this impression, I sort of throwing myself into the sea like that. So, Peter was a sort of a sparky sort of guy, but I don't think he was the leader until this happened. Now, at this point, he must have felt it was really out of favour. When you do something wrong, when you let someone down or you fall out with someone, it's hard, isn't it? The first time you meet that person, the first time that you bump into that person, it's really awkward. You think that they're judging you, you're judging yourself, or it may be that you're judging them. And until circumstances or time moves on, then you don't really sort of quite connect as well with that person as you maybe once did. And I suspect that Peter surely must have been in that position with Jesus. He must have been at that moment with Jesus where he was like, "Flipping out, Lord, I'm really sorry, I have really messed up." But Jesus calls him out on this sort of thing. And it feels like Jesus is testing him even further. Firstly, he calls him Simon. Now, Jesus had sort of changed Simon's name to Peter, meaning the rock, earlier on in the Gospels. Now, all of a sudden, he's calling him Simon. He doesn't just call him Simon, he calls him Simon 3 times, and also he calls him Simon, son of John. He's making it absolutely clear that Peter's an earthly man. I think that's deliberate, I really do, and I think that would have stung Peter. I would have expected it to do anyway. It would have stung me. If Jesus, this man that I loved, had given me a special name, and then he called me Peter the Rock, and then all of a sudden, when I sort of screw up, next time he sees me, he calls me, "Hey up, Terence, how you doing? Terence, son of Michael, how are you?" I'd be like, "Well, I'm all right. I am still Terence, but I'm actually Peter now." Now, what he was actually saying is, "Simon, do you love me?" You know, Simon, and I know, that you bottled it when the tough times came. The time when you could have proved your love, the time when you were all mouth, you actually walked away from me and you denied me. You swore you'd never known me. You know that, Simon. Peter's response is interesting, because he eventually does get rattled and eventually does say, "Look, Lord, I can't prove it anymore to you. You know. Interestingly as well, that Jesus' response every time is, "If you love me, feed my sheep. If you love me, become the leader that you should be. If you love me, then be the guy that we need for the Acts of the Apostles. Be the guy the church needs." Hey, Chris. Interestingly, Simon deflects Jesus' attention onto John by saying, "What about him?" It's funny, isn't it, when you've done something wrong and your mum catches you doing something wrong or whatever, and you straight away, well, obviously it doesn't happen much nowadays because I'm 50, but when I was a kid, then one of the first things that kids do is they'll say, "Well, what about him?" Or in my case, my brother, "What about Michael? He was doing it as well." And this is what this immature bloke's doing here. He's saying, "Well, Lord, I get all that, I really do, but what about John? He didn't step up to the plate either." And Jesus is like, "It's irrelevant, Pete." Jesus' response is almost indignant. Jesus answered, "If I want him to remain alive until I return," here we go, "what is that to you? This is about you and me, Pete." And then he says, "You must follow me." What John does is irrelevant. What John does is between me and John. But Peter, you've got to stand on your own 2 feet. And Jesus is saying this to all of us. He's saying, "But Terence, this is between me and you, mate. This is nothing to do with whoever." So, what do we learn? What do we learn from this short scripture? First of all, Jesus really knows people. I think it's interesting sometimes in our relationships with God, we feel we need to explain ourselves to him. "Yeah, but you see, Lord, I'm this type of person, or I'm that type of person, and I need this really," and all, etc., etc. What we really need to get in our heads, our thick heads, is that Jesus really knows us. He really, 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 really knows us. And he knew Peter. And he knew that what Simon needed right now was to become Peter. And he knew he needed to cut through Peter's bluster, Simon's bluster. He needed to cut through it all and get him to recommit. He knew that he had to really reinforce a message with him to say, "Look, Simon, I need you to be Peter, and I need you to commit to be Peter and feed my sheep, tend my sheep, look after my flock. I need you, Peter." Secondly, we can see that Jesus forgave Peter. I think that Jesus forgave Peter a long time before this. Jesus forgave Peter as he forgave us all on the cross. Jesus wasn't putting Peter through this as type of penance, as type of a saying, "Well, Pete, you let me down, but, I'm going to really tell you off now for a while." That wasn't the angle here at all. Jesus was reinforcing a message with Simon Peter and saying, "Look, I need you to commit and I need you to feed my lambs. Do you love me?" Thirdly, Jesus wanted Peter to lead his sheep. This is probably that moment in time where, so earlier on in the Gospels, Jesus is called Simon Peter, made in the rock, etc. It's probably the second time where he's reinforcing publicly to other people, "Hang on a minute, this is Simon Peter, and he's going to be my leader. He's going to lead my sheep." Fourthly, Peter forgave himself. It's come out a lot in these messages we've been having, the fact that we need to forgive ourselves. We need to move on ourselves. I think like most of us, we find that hard, don't we? We find it hard to forgive ourselves sometimes. We find it difficult to actually allow God to forgive us. because we're hanging on to things. You know what? We need to move on. We need to forgive ourselves again and again and again because Jesus has. And the last thing it shows us is this. When God is pinpointing something in Terence Clark's life, then Terence Clark needs to handle it. I need to take it on board. Let's not negotiate with God and say, well, you know what, Lord, I know that I screwed up, but what about this fella? What about this girl here? It's irrelevant. God is talking to us. God is talking to me. He's talking to us personally. He's talking to you now through my clumsy words or through your own experiences. God is reaching into us and deals with us as an individual. So we need to respond and react to that as an individual and not deflect onto somebody else. Because what other people are doing is nothing to do with us. So that's my few thoughts on Jesus' connection there with Peter. I'm with you tonight for Acts. So I will see you then. Have a lovely, lovely day. Look at my garden. It is it's quite nice today. So if you are not working, you'll be able to sit out there and enjoy a bit of sun or do whatever you're doing while you're not working. And if you are working, then, well, you can look out the window like I can. Have a lovely day, everybody, and take care. Bye then.